Hey guys, Tyler here with Revvin Reviews. So today we're going to be talking about a car that most of you guys have been interested in, and I've been interested in it as well. We've seen a lot of teasers about it and things like that. It's the McLaren 720S. So McLaren's been giving us a little bit of teaser pictures and teaser trailers about this car and some teaser performance statistics and stuff like that, just to kind of keep our interests up on it. But they've never really released the full entirety of the car. I believe it was back in September of last year or October of last year, people were saying that there's going to be a replacement to the F1 coming out called the 720S. Well, this is a 720S. It's not replacing the F1, not unfortunately, but it's not replacing the F1. It's not going to be a new F1 or anything like that. It's just replacing the 650S as a higher performing car for the McLaren lineup. This car is going to be featuring the same engine and drivetrain as the McLaren 650S, which is the 4-liter twin-turbo V8 engine, and it's also going to be producing 710 horsepower and 568 foot-pound of torque. That leads to a 0 to 60 time of around, give or take a little bit of like 2.9 seconds is what McLaren's saying. They're saying it's less than 2.9 seconds, but we will know for sure when we're actually able to test it. The top speed of it is about 212 miles an hour, according to McLaren as well. And then the 0 to 60, or the quarter mile time rather, is quite interestingly 10.3 seconds. That's very fast for a street legal car. That's insanely quick, and I can't even imagine what it would be like to be in there. Because keep in mind, this is a rear wheel drive car. So rear wheel drive through the 7-speed automatic transmission with a 4-liter twin turbo engine in it. I mean, I guess that's for good, I guess. That's a really good a good performance mesh, if you will. What they've done with this car is they've had to do a couple different changes. They've changed it a lot from the 650S. It's still similar to the 650S, like the engine is the same exact engine out of the 650S, but they've changed it a little bit. They've taken actually 41% of the engine, if you break it down to percentages, if you will. 41% of the engine is brand new, so they had to do a bigger stroke so that you could get a little bit more power out of that engine. So they did a couple of things. They took new rods and pistons. They had a new intake entirely new intake, which that new intake included bigger turbos. Then they had to put new heads on it and a new crankshaft as well. So it's going to be it's basically a new engine, but with old engine parts, a little bit of old engine parts, about 60% of old engine parts. But it's going to be a great performing car nonetheless, due to the performance statistics that we know of. This car weighs in around 2,500 pounds, which is quite light considering that it's a performance car, yet it still has the luxuries of leather and Alcantara and things like that that are super nice and plush, and you don't mind sitting in them. I've gotten to sit in a 650S. That's a really nice car. I've gotten to sit in a 570. That's another really nice car. I've gotten to sit in a P1. That's another very, very nice car. All of them have one thing in common. I really like the interior, and they're very comfortable. I'm 6'1", and I fit in them perfectly fine, which that's hard for me to do in a big car. What they've done to increase performance on this, they've done a couple of things. They've revamped the entire suspension setup. So you have a couple of things that change with that. They added on 12 sensors compared to the 650S. So there's a total of 21 sensors now when it comes to the wheel system. So it'll tell you the wheel angle and adjustments that need to be done, and what the wheel movements that are happening as well. And then this leads into better cornering and better handling, therefore. They've had to do a couple of things when it comes to the chassis management. They've made a whole new carbon fiber monocoque. Basically, it's a one-piece carbon fiber design, similar to the McLaren P1, and it has a similar doors to the McLaren P1 that mount on the roof and on the side of the car, that lift straight up or out like the McLaren P1, and similar to the LaFerrari as well. And they honestly look stunning when they're open. You guys can see a picture up there. This has led to a couple other things that they've had to do. They decided to get away from the side door, or the side scoops on the doors. As many of you guys know, if you look at most every McLaren, they all have the big old side scoop coming in from the door, which looks intimidating and stuff, but McLaren wanted to stray away from that. But in doing so, they had to really, in all reality, change their mindset on how to produce cars. So they had to obviously bump out the doors, but they had to find a new way to harness that air that was coming in the side of the car to go into the turbos, because a naturally aspirated engine might be able to do well if you had some hood scoops that sucked it into the rear, and then a roof scoop maybe, but without the side scoops, it's hard to get all that air that the twin turbos need. So they had to completely redesign it. They haven't necessarily released how they redesigned it, but they did say that they had to redesign their entire intake system to compensate for that. We can see a couple of things though when it comes to the intake system. First of all, you'll see the roof scoop. The roof scoop is very, very prevalent, and you'll be able to tell that it's there because you can see it. And then obviously we do know that there is no door intakes. So they're saying that there's different openings on the car. I just have not been able to find them, and nobody really knows what they are. Now, if you guys are curious as to how much this car is going to be costing about the same amount as the Huracan Performante, $285,000. This car is similar to the Performante. I think that this car might be a little bit less performing than the Performante, but also keep in mind you're going to have a lot more creature comforts. You're going to have a lot more of when you're inside of the car, it's not going to feel like you're in a race car, but you're actually inside of a decent sports car. So when somebody gets in your car, they don't have to ask you like, hey, why is there carbon fiber everywhere? And then you have to say, because race car. You just say, hey, you like my car? Hop in, let's go. And then this car is also being released in June of 2017. So 2017, this year, June, I'm waiting to see them. We know the owners of a dealership that deals McLarens, and we might drive out there just to see what one of these things looks like when it first lands. Maybe get a quick view at it. Maybe even get a ride in one. I don't know. We'll see what happens. But anyways, on that note, guys, I want to leave you guys with this. What do you guys think of the McLaren 720S? I personally am a big fan of it. I think that it's going to redesign the entire supercar world, hypercar world, things like that. I think that all these lower end cars, if you will, that are coming in are going to completely redesign what's happening in the hypercar world. Because the hypercars are going to be going extinct due to these $200,000 cars. So I'm just curious as to what your guys' thoughts are on this. Go ahead and leave them in the comments below or on our social media accounts. I don't know why I always point that way, but our social media accounts are that way, I guess. And then in the survey above. And have a great day.